everybody. This is the Park Committee meeting, a video teleconference meeting for November the 9th. Today we are here to listen to what the Hitchcock Group has to present us when it comes to the master plan at Lakeview Park. And Philip, I guess I turn it over to you. We do have the two court members and myself here, Scotty Tracy, Squire Muller, present to make the committee meeting official. Philip, I turn over to you. Looks like Squire Tracy's got a question.
Thanks, Judge. I do have a couple questions. Where is this? Is this on Facebook or is this on YouTube?
Andrea, will you answer that?
So it is on YouTube, and we are getting ready to link it to our Facebook page. So it is on both.
Okay. Do we want to wait until we get started before it's linked, Andrew? We've got several people that are interested in this.
Sure. We're on YouTube right now, and I'm pulling over the link to Facebook right as we speak.
All right, so we can continue on.
Judge, Hitchcock Design, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. Phil, Randy, Shannon, thank you all. For one reason or another, just before we get started, over the last week or so, misinformation's been spread throughout the community in regards to the project. Before we get started, can you all explain the difference between programs and property? Just so everybody's on the same page, because I've answered a ton of questions in regards to programs and property over the last 10 days or so.
Would you like for me to take that one, Randy?
Sure, Phil.
Okay, so the property, obviously, as we know it, Lakeview Park, that's what we refer to the property, the boundary lines of Lakeview Park. When it comes to the program of Lakeview Park, when we are setting up the program, initially we're looking at amenities and facilities to determine what will be the program, meaning what rises to the top as the emerging themes from the community input. And that's the initial core program, excuse me, that we presented on last time, were those amenities and facilities that were identified by the public to see where the future vision for the property would go. Once we've established that, which we have, we'll now utilize that term as programs and events. Now those are the specific activities that will take place in the spaces, the original core program that we talked about, those amenities and facilities and spaces that will be created. So programs and events will take place in those spaces. And those are the two differences that we have. But again, property is Lakeview Park and its boundaries.
So to be clear, the programs are going to go on the property. They have to go within those spaces. So
correct. The program is the amenities and facilities as part of the design that Shannon and Randy will go through here in just a moment that you'll see on it. And then the tournaments, those are the events, individual sports competitions or league play. Those would be the programs that would take place within the site in the property boundaries.
Okay, thank you. Phil, while you're at it, so just one more question. With a project like this, obviously, some look at it one way, some look at it other. So when you all start on these projects, is it best to look at the overall project as a whole to determine what works best and where programs and access should go to ensure that the overall flow and layout runs smooth when the project is complete? Would that be accurate?
Yes, that would be accurate. It is good to look at it as full build out to start. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Philip, another question that I present to you and Shannon and Randy for transparency's sake. Has anybody from this committee, including the Squires, myself, or anybody that Charlie Lewis or any other member given you called on the phone, talked to you, send emails to you where you have communicated back and forth with emails or texts since our last meeting?
No, Judge, I have not had any conversations, communications, or emails with anyone
Okay.
other than our team, meaning our design team.
Randy or Shannon?
We've spoken with Charlie, the design team, and the Squires.
You've talked with the Squires?
Yes,
So Squires, so you've communicated outside the meeting with the group? Yes, no? Squire Muller, what Squires are you talking about? Both Squire Muller and Squire Tracy?
yes, we've had discussions with them about various questions.
Judge, I had talked to them about, they had asked about the pump track, that we're doing with Franklin County in the back there. So I had sent them that information as far as what Troy Hearn had prepared as far as where that is on the property.
Is that the extent of your conversation, Squire Muller?
Yeah.
Squire Tracy?
Judge, I sent an email, which you were copied on as well, in regards to items that were discussed at the last meeting. So you have that email, you were copied on it as well, as far as correspondence.
Well, what about the response back? Because I have not seen a response back. Did you all respond back from that email that Squire Tracy sent you?
I didn't get a response back, sir.
Okay. So you've had
Thank
no
you.
contact other than that email?
Sent the email and followed up with a call to make sure they got it,
Okay, so then you did talk with them.
to make sure they got the email,
That's all your conversation was?
because there was no response. So
Did you have any other correspondence with them about anything else other than your email?
just what I said, Judge.
Well, I'm asking you to reiterate what you just said. Have you had you said you contacted them, so that's all I've heard.
Correct, to make sure they got the email that you were copied on as well.
All right. Well, there's been a lot of accusations that a lot of things are going on behind the scenes by the two Squires, and I'm unaware of what has been transpiring. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the committees are supposed to work in a transparent fashion and not behind the scenes with what is going on. So we'll
I
move
agree.
forward. We'll move forward. Go ahead, Philip, you start.
All right, I would actually hand it over to Shannon and to Randy. They're going to start the presentation, and my portion will follow.
So to start off with, I'd like to apologize if you hear drills, hammering, or any other type of construction noise. Evidently, they're renovating the office space above ours, and we did not know that until literally just now. So if we need to shut things down for a minute, we will, to try to get these folks to quiet down.
All right, well, thank you to the court and the committee for having us, and to everybody online. We've done a couple of these presentations with those who have not seen before. My name's Shannon Creasy, project manager for this project with Hitchcock Design Group, and this is Randy Royer, principal in charge, also with Hitchcock Design Group. With us today, we also have Andy Howard from Hitchcock Design Group, Philip Parnan, who you'll hear from later from Pros Consulting, as well as Mark Thompson from VFW Engineers. All right, and I do not want to take up too much time because we have a lot of exciting things to present to you guys. But I do want to kind of give you a recap of where we've been to get to where we are today. So back in May, the design team started on an inventory and an analysis and presented those findings to the team. These boards may look familiar from previous presentations, but some of the areas that we did some research included soils, topography, floodplains, wetlands, utilities, archaeology, historic assets, as well as existing deeds and grants. And all of these findings really kind of help to guide some of the feasibility of some of the solutions that we've come up with. The next stage was the community engagement. Over 52 individual representatives from different organizations were able to participate in the stakeholder meetings that we held at Lakeview Park, specifically in the Carter House. And we also received over 1,200 community members' input between the community event that was hosted at the park, as well as the online survey and the paper survey. So feedback from these community input engagements, as well as the needs assessment, helped to create these guiding principles. Again, these are revenue generation, regional draw, local needs, economic impact, and the year-round capabilities, as well as available funding. These guiding principles really then help to drive the core principles or core programs that Phil presented in the last meeting. So the core program then can really be broken down into 3 different categories. One, which is improve the existing or improve or increase the existing amenities on site. Connectivity, so creating a better circulation for all users throughout the park, as well as providing new amenities, which include a multi-use recreational convention facility, an amphitheater, and additional community spaces. So again, these programs and these guiding principles have driven the solutions and the feasibility of the master plan. So I will now kind of let Randy dive into how we've implemented these core programs and the master plan process.
So based on the conversations that we've had, and it was actually very refreshing to have the number of people from the community come out and be involved in the survey. I think we had 280 some people that we interacted with the day that we were actually in the park. That was, a great way to start the project. I think as we took that information, based on what we heard, and started looking at the actual park itself, some of the conversations that I personally had were interesting with residents or some of the folks that utilize the park a lot. They love the topography, they love the look and the feel of the park, and expressed an interest of wanting to keep that. And so as we started thinking about envisioning what this, the park could be with these different programmatic elements, it was clear that we needed to keep that feel of kind of the history of the area. The rolling hills, red brick home, just the historical architecture. Some of these items were things that kind of popped out to us after being down there and talking with folks. Go ahead, Shannon. So this is where we have landed at this point based on what we've heard to date. And you'll notice, can I have the pointer? In the center is a fairly large white box. That is what we heard was from a number of the survey respondents and discussions that we've had, was the desire for a multi-use type facility. Now, it was also very clear that sports, doing something with the sports fields, providing some opportunity for some sports tourism was very important. Being able to accommodate the fair was important, and keeping the amenities that are already there, the dog park, the splash pad, the playground. We could probably go to the next one. There we go. The dog park down in the corner, the splash pad and playground, making them larger, better. We heard that from a number of people. And then having an amphitheater was something that was very important that came up. And of course, the golf course, keeping the golf course, keeping the driving range. And, you know, as we started trying to fit the various pieces of the program on the park, obviously a facility this is a 160,000 square foot facility, and Phil can get into a little deeper about how that we landed on that number. Where can we put that on a park this size? And we ended up, what we're suggesting is locating it in the center of the park as the hub, providing really reworking the current building, the golf pro shop that's there, and actually providing some indoor heated spaces for the driving range. Sorry. There's lots of details here. It could actually be a revenue generator. And then over here by the amphitheater, providing an opportunity for restaurant and an area that could serve this amphitheater, this music venue. So in doing that, we're able to keep all of this. And then we have this area along the side as you enter the park, this lawn area, maintaining the lawn area, but there's some topography there. So it's more, we've kind of penciled in those fields so you can give you an idea of the scale. Those are basically two soccer fields, gives you an idea how much space there is there. And as you come in, we did hear from a number of people that the motorsports arena was very important, wanted to keep that and upgrade it. So providing some better seating and potentially, what were we going to put in there?
An accessible route
yes.
to get to the building to create more.
There, and then extending this parking, creating a little more parking around this area that would also serve the softball fields. And the softball fields themselves would be turfed, as well as these, you see these other fields up here. These are multi-use fields. And then taking a look at the historical side of things, improving some things in this area, obviously landscape, there's an opportunity to create some gardens behind the home. And then Charlie, the need for improving the barns for maintenance, as well as just exhibit space during the fair. We heard that loud and clear as well. So, maintaining the barns, maintaining the historic structures was very important. All right. So this is just a zoomed in view of really the core, the heart of the park. So down here in the lower left-hand corner, that's obviously the new facility or the proposed facility. Strong connection out to the ball fields and the playground and improved water park. And basically this provides, during tournaments, whether they're on the multi-use fields or the softball fields, this would provide an opportunity for families to entertain family members that weren't actually playing. So then, are there any questions?
Go back to the big one.
We'll go back to the big one.
Philip or Randy, do you all have an overlay where you can put the present day park flap over top of what you're proposing there so we get a better reference on where everything is and what's moving, what's not moving?
I can be sure to share that. I do not have that right now. I guess just to kind of give you an idea of what will stay. Carter House stays. We do keep all the buildings with up here. We have proposed better circulation and a wider kind of area that can be used as a market or food truck space up here. The skate park and pickleball stay with proposed additional shelters to kind of access those a little bit better. The softball and concession stands are all staying, but we are proposing improvements to all of that. Lighting and turf fields, the concessions and restrooms will be updated. All of these fields will kind of be renovated again to make these turf. These darker colored ones will stay lawn, but kind of the whole area where the existing Hancock Pavilion, playground, and splash pad currently are would get renovated and shifted. We'd like to reuse as much of those splash pad things as possible, but we would be improving the playground and expanding the splash pad.
So it looks like you've eliminated the Hancock Pavilion and the Robinson Pavilion for a splash pad or splash.
Yes, we are still proposing a large community pavilion similar to the Hancock Pavilion down in this core area that can still be used for the same amenities. It's the same size. And we've proposed 6 additional shelters throughout the park to be used for community use. However, whether that's rentable, but yes, those existing pavilions would be removed. Then 2 other.
Squire Bowler have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Judge Randy. So could you go back to the picture that kind of zoomed in on the playground area? Yeah. So with the playground area, I mean, do we have the potential to make it like good for autism kids, blind kids, ADA accessible, all those things?
We've proposed a universal playground, yes.
Okay, and then the splash pad there, like I think to the judge's point, what size? I think we're all are familiar with the splash pad, the existing Don Sturgeon splash pad. Excuse me. What size is this proposed one compared to the one we have?
This one is about 4,000 square feet, which I think yours right now is maybe a third of that size.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So this would be, expanding the size quite a bit of both the playground and the splash pad to accommodate for the numbers that we've kind of heard from the community. We'd also propose, again, a pavilion that could be used for similar uses as well as additional uses and programming, and just like a seating area to, again, accommodate for families that are doing either here for local play or here for the tournaments.
Okay.
As far as some of the other amenities, the motorsports arena would be expanded to accommodate the Derby. So we've widened that. And we are proposing to move the dog park to a more central area to be easier accessible near a parking lot, and kind of creating a more passive recreation space down, which I guess this is north.
So can I ask another question then? Judge,
Yeah,
okay if I ask a question?
Sure.
Well, Shannon, I was curious about the dog park, but no, you can go back out to the other one you were on. What does that mean, passive, on the bottom right-hand corner? What does that mean? Because that's where the dog park is now, correct?
Correct. So we would create more trails, increase some of the natural or native landscaping. So it'd be more of a place to kind of go rest, have a picnic, kind of create more of a natural feel rather than this space up here, which is going to be more of like your active play.
Okay, thank you. I'm good, Judge.
Yeah. So we want
Shannon, it looks like you've eliminated the disc golf for that.
So
park,
disc golf currently is right here. And again, right now we could still maintain that. But from previous conversations that I heard on the post, I thought, or we all kind of agreed that the disc golf would be perfect if we could partner with the high school and kind of go with where the pump track is, kind of back in this area. But I mean, that is something we can still take a look at, because I know disc golf is huge in the community. So we wouldn't necessarily want to remove it unless we could make sure it could be kind of either shifted, 9 holes here, 9 holes here. But that's still something we want to look at.
Shannon, Randy, or Philip, has somebody told you all not to put tennis courts in? Because I see those 2 courts coming in on the right, and I know that the stakeholder group, there were people from the tennis association. I know they've called me and wondered why are we not putting tennis courts at Lakeview Park. And even the city said that they would work with the county on putting tennis courts in, which are much needed in the community. Is there a reason you haven't drawn in tennis courts on the right there?
Yes, Judge. There in the program document that you all sent us, on the last page, there were a number of items that were listed as wants, and we're not ignoring those wants, but as we get through the rest of this, you'll start to see how we started to make some decisions. But on the tennis court side of things, our thought was this multi-use facility is going to be providing the opportunity for indoor tennis, or could provide the opportunity for indoor tennis, which is not currently around. And Phil did some homework on that, and it not only would be a local draw, but regional draw, given the fact that there's just not much of it around. And we felt, as we started looking at the numbers, which we'll get into a little bit more later, that there is room in the park if you decide, if the committee decides we want to add tennis, outdoor tennis, there is room and we can do that. But from a budgetary standpoint, we thought, given the number of tennis courts in the community that were already outdoor, that maybe we just needed to focus on the indoor piece. And then if you decided, hey, we want to add outdoor tennis courts here beyond the indoor offering, we can do that.
So tell me, how many tennis courts did you come up with in the community?
Phil, what are you around? I can't see Phil.
I am here.
Phil, do you remember that off the top of your head? I thought it was around 15 or 20.
There's 3 tennis facilities. There's 3 of them. 2 at each high school and 1 downtown. So I don't think that's too many, especially if we're going to try to do a draw of bringing regional tournaments and stuff in. I like the idea of the indoor courts. That wasn't listed in your last time. There were indoor tennis was not part of it. Now I'm glad that you're moving towards indoor tennis, but the outdoor tennis is needed as well. Good outdoor tennis courts are hugely needed. Anyway, I'll let you continue on, and we'll continue, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Okay. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. I think as we were doing this, we wanted the numbers started to climb, and we thought, all right, we're going to have to make some decisions here. And again, it's all on paper, so that now's the time to let us know what changes need to be made. We're just trying to be responsible with the budget.
Wait, let me ask you something. We've heard a great deal of talk about the driving range. Yeah. And you've actually moved the driving range to a little bit different format than what it was before. Are you planning then to, if in putting it the direction that you've got, you would have to put very high netting up? Is that Did you consider that?
Yeah, so we
Yes.
looked at, I mean, this plan is one of several that we've been through, and to accommodate the building in this location, we did have to shift the bays forward. But you still have 270 yards of golf, of swing. This would need to be fenced or netted, but we're also proposing lighting as well. So again, the fact that we would be again proposing heated bays, netted, and a lit solution, it would really kind of it would change what's currently there, yes, but we also think it would kind of have a return on investment, because again, it would elongate the hours and the time of year that it could be used. So that was the thought process behind that.
Yeah, year-round activities was one of the larger goals that we were wanting to achieve. And with the driving range, heated bays, and making that to where it could be utilized year-round really brought in an additional opportunity.
What's the, from the heated bays to the tree line in that trapezoid looking shape there? What is the distance from the heated bays to the end line where your hand is right now?
270 yards.
270? Okay.
Yes, and I think the standard Top Golf is 240.
Okay.
So that was kind of what we were basing it off of.
Now, the other thing to consider, Judge, is this right now is just a big white box. It's a placeholder. It represents, the size of, roughly the size of building, but when you actually get into the design, this shape will morph. Squire Muller?
Thank you. Okay, since we're on the driving range, I just want to kind of question. I'm trying to get things in perspective. So, how many existing? I'm not a golfer. How many existing places are there that people can drive the ball? Sorry for my terminology.
Phil, do you know off the top of your head,
Or maybe Charlie.
Charlie can tell us.
It can vary, and Charlie, you can chime in here as well too. It can vary based upon how much of the turf is getting tore up. So they'll shift those spots for individuals on the driving range periodically to allow the turf to recover in certain areas. Charlie, did you have the total number that currently exists?
Currently, there's spots for 12 heated bays on the back.
Okay, so there's 12. Thank you, Charlie. So
No,
then,
they're not all installed. There's only 3 that are installed and they're not in use.
okay, but there's 12 bays across there. I'm trying to look at everything from proportion wise. There's 12 spots, Charlie. Is that right?
Currently on the back porch, yes.
Okay, thank you. So Phil or Randy or whoever, about how many spots would fit on the backside of that building?
We accommodated 15.
All right, perfect. So we're adding spots, we're putting lights, and we're heating them. So, okay, thank you.
And Squire Muller, there's also,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, there's also the opportunity to stack those. Because the structure is more than one story, it is possible to have more than one, more than ground level bays as part of it as well. That is going to drive up costs, but it does have a return on that investment too.
Is
Okay,
there,
thank you.
we just installed back maybe not too long ago, maybe in the spring, a sand bunker, a practice sand bunker, and putting greens. I don't see those in there. Are those not part of this?
They would, yeah. All the putting greens, tee space would still be accommodated. They might be moved. Again, that would need a little bit of a closer study, but those would still remain for the golfers and anybody and the teams to use as well.
But they're not in this plan though, right?
No, I think we would, again, maybe have to shift them closer to the golf course.
Charlie, what are your thoughts as you see this layout?
Well, just it's great to see the golf facility as a whole still there. I do like the idea lighting and netting it and having the heated bays for year-round use. That's it's the only driving range in town. And we actually have people come in from other communities to use the facility. So those are nice additions. Having enough T space to accommodate the high schools and the colleges that use it, and the school teams, that will be important. In practice putting greens and chipping areas, those all get used tremendously, especially during their seasons, but also out of season as well. It's a pretty heavily used driving range, weather permitting, and and then having the heated bays will create, if they're covered, and that's a great addition.
Does it look like, it looks to me like, and Charlie, I don't know, and maybe Phil or Randy can answer this as well. It looks like there's a redesign of all the fairways, and are going to have to be redesign of the 9-hole course itself, based on what I see right there. Is that true, Charlie?
We have included a budget number to address some of the drainage and irrigation issues, but we are not redesigning the golf course.
So one of the things,
go ahead.
one of the things, thank you, Judge. One of the things that we had heard from the stakeholder input was the importance of golf and at this location being a developmental activity, utilizing the driving range as well as, to the point earlier, the putting greens and chipping areas, as well as the course itself. And we believe there's a unique opportunity here to look at the entire facility as a developmental facility, especially when you're including youth sports within the outdoor sports fields and within the inside of the complex as well. So ultimately, we thought that enhancements that were going to be made to this needed to be along those lines, where it could really help developmentally the individuals that use this space progress their game a little bit further, so they can accomplish their goals as it pertains to golf. And that layout with the 9 holes, the driving range, and the chipping and putting greens do exactly that. Allow it to continue. We were a little surprised that the green fees and the driving range were relatively close in revenue generation. That's a very well used driving range.
But are you going to tell us where you would put the sand bunker, practice bunker, and the putting green and all of that? Is that where you? I don't see it on there. So are you going to say this is the area that you would put those in? Because you're going to be asked that. We're going to be asked that. Where are they?
Sure. Well, I think that's part of why we're having this presentation early. Is, we want to get feedback from you. This is our really first shot out of the box, trying to put all the puzzle pieces together. As far as that goes, it may be possible to squeeze it in this area or this area and move the dog park across the way. The challenge is, and we might be able to move some of the parking and to get it closer to the building. So it's a matter of where your priorities lie, and what you think your community would like to see.
And what you've observed from users of the facility currently. So this is where, the ground knowledge that Charlie and the staff have, as well as you all spending time out there as well, can really benefit the location to make sure that the flow does not create any unintended consequences, but really makes it a more cohesive experience for those that are there developing their golf game.
I would like to see you on the right as you come in, have 6 tennis courts on the right. I still cannot fathom not having tennis courts there, putting possibly 2 more soccer fields in there. I don't see any reason why you can't have that in there. Okay,
only reason-
Squire Tracy, you've had your hand up. Go ahead.
Thanks, Judge. Randy, Shannon, Phil, quick question. In regards to the additional shelters, you haven't touched on restroom facilities. Are those, where are we at on those?
So we are proposing, an updated restroom at the softball area, restrooms here at this kind of core plaza area, and then there would be restrooms at this entry plaza is what we're calling it as well. So there would be an updated restroom, a replacement restroom similar to the Hancock, and then an additional restroom.
Would you not have restrooms at the amphitheater?
We are anticipating, again, that's an option, but we would anticipate it being more a part of this building.
Squire Muller?
Thank you. So let me ask you, and if I missed it, I apologize. Up towards the top of the screen where you said there was 3 multi-use fields, there's 3 other small fields around them. What are those?
Those are the size for U8 soccer. So those could this court field here is U6, and those would be similar to what you guys have out right now, where they would just be grass and lined however you wanted them to be lined. So again, these 2 fields as well as these fields would just be the grass lined to use as you need. Again, flexible to accommodate whatever use the program calls for.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Charlie, could I ask, I know that we've been partners with the Y for a long time. Is what Shannon just explained enough to handle what they've been doing?
Definitely, yes. Yeah, those multi-use fields will be very, very popular. And of
Right, but
course-
I meant like the U8 and the U6 for the little bitty kids.
Yeah, if those 3 are U8, U6, and maybe that 4th one up in the top corner, we currently have 4 of those fields on the big main field up next to the Hancock Pavilion right now. So if they're putting 4 back in, that's good.
All right, thank you, Charlie.
A little bit of-
Philip or Randy or Shannon, why did you eliminate the sand volleyball that we just put in?
Wasn't a revenue generator, and it just didn't, as it related to some of the other programmatic elements, didn't seem to really bear itself out very well.
I don't. How can you say that when you haven't, how are you able to judge that when we've just got them going and we don't know we're supposed to be partnering with the city on that? I'm curious how you made that determination that they're not popular, evidently.
Well, so from our standpoint, when looking at the program, the sand volleyball courts, as far as existing features, was not one of the items that rose to the top. When we look at it compared to revenue generation, the main guiding principles of the project, they do not achieve as many or the return on investment that the soccer fields would obtain for revenue generation and regional draw.
So are you basing everything then on revenue? What we should, I mean, the dog park's obviously not going to bring in revenue, but we've never built this park just on revenue. It's quality of life and offering amenities to people and all of that as well.
You're absolutely right. And, in addition that, going back to earlier in the presentation, when we talked about, the guidelines, that's what we used to make these decisions. So, based on what we heard, revenue generation is important. Multi-functional space is very important. Year-round use was very important. But then we also heard from a number of people that there are certain individual elements in the park that are currently there that are very important to them as well. And they more or less said, we'd like to upgrade them, but please keep them. And, we tried to respect that. Volleyball didn't really land in that area. And and again, now we're presenting this to you, this is based on what we've heard and, how we design parks. We still have to vet that through folks like yourself who are local. And if you go, hey, you know what, even if it's not a revenue generator, we got to have this. Now's the time to do it because it's just still ink on paper. But we want you to understand that why we made that decision. So it wasn't just, no, we don't like volleyball, we're throwing it out. We thought the highest and best use for the property was what we're showing you here based on the information we gathered.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you that we're going to need to base this on revenue. We haven't gotten to the elephant in the room, and that you're right. The elephant in the room is the big 160,000 square foot building, but all the other amenities around, I hate to see us lose and not start making sure that we get as many amenities as we can. I'm just going to make it very clear. I think tennis courts should go in on the right. I think the volleyball needs to stay. I think more restrooms are needed as part of the overlook of the park in certain areas. Now, one of the things that was very clear in the discussion, preliminary discussion by us, as well as the community, was circulation within the park. So explain that where that comes in, and lighting and signage.
So for circulation, if you look, hang on, there's my hand. All right. So we've still got the entrance here, it basically loops around, and we've got this other entrance over here. This, although I think many people would like to see this as the main entrance, it just doesn't really work well with the historic nature of this part of the park. And so therefore we have said, really the main entrance needs to be over here. There will be signage that will be needed to show people where the main entrance into the park is. From a vehicular circulation, we've also said, okay, we need to connect and have this enlarged parking lot. And then there's an opportunity to bring a drive down, because part of the problem with this corner of the park is if you have any kind of mobility issues, you don't really it's not easy to get to or easy to use. And so the thought there was have a third entrance into the park from this end with some parking to be a little more convenient to those that have the mobility type issues. And as far as the pedestrian circulation and the trails, obviously we're going to need to add more through here, but we completely understand that that's an important part of the park, and connectivity to the surrounding neighborhoods as well is important. So those things will remain and be improved and elongated as far as the trail system goes in the final.
Okay. All right. Let's move to the
Judge.
elephant.
Judge.
Who's that? Scar Tracy. Sorry.
Guys, if you don't care, can you touch on the motorsports arena? And also, will the fair be impacted by this? I know that was part of the, I know you all heard quite a bit about that through the community engagement process.
To be fair, as the layout currently is, as it was last year, we'll have plenty of space in the same parking lot, just that's technically west or east of the softball fields. But again, you can see we are increasing hardscape throughout the park. So I mean, there's definitely opportunities for the fair to move if need be, but no, the fair will be accommodated. As far as the motorsports goes, we are basically just, after speaking to people who have used the site or used the arena, we're just proposing to expand it and then create some better seating and viewing areas so that people can see what's going on in there.
Oops. Any other
Yes.
questions?
But the buildings, the Farm Bureau buildings and the other barns, are they still intact there?
Yes.
I think those three.
Yes.
So if the amphitheater goes in that spot, we would be eliminating the horse arena. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Hey, guys, could you touch on, I mean, the judge just asked kind of about the amphitheater. Could you touch on that? I don't think we heard much about that area over there.
So the thought with the amphitheater, and we did hear quite a bit about desire for an amphitheater in the park. And as the discussions that we've had, is that the horse part, that track wasn't used much. And with the topography in that area, it seemed to make a lot of sense that if you put an amphitheater in here, this being kind of the stage area, this area up in here could become more of a food truck, food court area. You've got this building, you could have a restaurant, you could have restrooms incorporated into the building, and then you've got a lot of parking available for various concerts and things that could happen in that amphitheater. So that was the thought. And again, we came right out of the box with, this is the big idea. You could make it a lot smaller amphitheater. You could try to keep the horse track, but it may not be the highest and best use or accommodate as many people if we did that.
Yeah, so this kind of layout, again, would need to be further developed, but it would accommodate like a green room, concessions area, covered seating for about 250 people. So that's the space you have there. And kind of the building shape is what the existing horse arena is now, to kind of give you an idea of size. So that can accommodate we're planning on and anticipating on accommodating 2,500 people.
Oh, okay, that was my question. You said 250 people.
2,500.
2,500.
Correct.
Is any of that, so that's just like in a grass area, I'm assuming?
It's, again, it can be developed how you want.
Okay.
That would anticipate, again, covered seating. So more, it would have kind of a open stage area or grass area, as well as set seating.
So both covered and open.
Okay.
That area in there would be virtually impossible for handicapped restrooms because it's so hilly. I do think there's going to be some really deeper look into where you put restrooms and how all that's set up down there, but that could come later.
Yeah.
Okay, now get into the elephant.
The elephant in the room. All right. So.
Do you want to phasing or just into?
We'll skip to it. So we've talked about some phasing, but we'll get into the elephant. All right. So phase one, what we are phase one, what we are suggesting, I need to move your pictures around. There we go. Is taking on the sports fields, leaving or going in, making the improvements to the sports fields, expanding the parking area, improving the golf course area as well, and the amphitheater. And the initial phase one budget for those elements is approximately $9,600,000.
Is that based on today's cost? Because everything seems to have gone up 30 or 40% since a year ago. What are you basing that on?
It's based on previous projects that we've worked on here recently.
When you say recently, have they today? Are you working on today, or were they done 2 years ago? Because within the past year, 30% is on the low end of markup.
You're looking at a 30% markup right there.
Okay.
Now, part of the thought was, we'll go through all this, then we can talk about why we phased it the way we phased it. And again, this is all subject to change based on your comments, but this is our first shot out of the box. All right, so then phase two is the multi-use facility, associated parking, and the driving range area, and the entrance, kind of the main entry road coming in. That has a $31,600,000 price tag. And again, that is really, that's based on just raw square footage of 160,000 square foot building.
Well, let me ask you something. We looked up what it would cost to do an indoor facility, and the going rate is $347 a square foot. What is the going rate for what you looked up?
What we looked up was 150,000, or I'm sorry, $150 a square foot, because
Really?
most of this is going to be open space.
Of the building itself is going to be just open space?
Yes.
Well, this said that gyms, it listed gyms. It also listed basketball gyms, open indoor facilities, including tennis. That the going rate right now for indoor recreation is $347 a square foot. So it's double what you're saying.
Phil, do you have any comments to that?
Yeah, so looking at the building, I want to make sure that we understand what the building is and what it is not. So I'm going under the assumption that everyone here has attended a conference and or a convention in the past. So what you will see is you'll see educational spaces or meeting rooms, those things that help people with professional development, as far as the lobby, the food court, all of the meeting rooms where various educational sessions will be. And then you also have what is known as exhibit space or event space. That is a very large shell, open in the middle for people to be able to bring in equipment, or whether it be playground equipment for the state of Kentucky Parks and Recreation Association, whether they're bringing in equipment as in mowers, backhoes, or whether they're bringing in playgrounds and constructing those in there. That is a multi-purpose space. So that's not going to have high decorative finishes because it needs to be turned over. That space is going to have to be turned over for each sport. It's going to have to be turned over for each convention as well too, meaning getting that space ready. So when we look at this, the pricing that we're hearing from you, Judge, is more appropriate and more indicative of what you would see on the recreation educational side, where those meeting rooms are, the kitchen, the food court, the lobby, the administrative offices. Those are going to have those higher finishes, and those are going to be the higher per square foot cost. The exhibit hall is a less square foot cost because, again, we're not putting in those high-end finishes because those will have the potential to be damaged during turnover. So we're keeping that as an event convention exhibit space. And that's the difference between the price and what you're seeing or hearing, I should say.
Any of the squires got any comments about that? Squire Muller?
No, I mean, they hopefully know what they're doing, and this is what they do for a living. I do know some costs are starting to come down. I mean, the biggest deal in our world is just availability, which, is happening across the country. I was going to ask, and I should have asked when we started, are we going to be able to get a copy of this presentation? I guess Shannon or Randy?
Yes.
All right,
And
thank
I'll
you.
go ahead and include an overlay, like the judge has mentioned, so you can kind of get a better depiction of what's there and what's proposed.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Any other comments, thoughts? All right, so then that brings us to the final phase, which is really taking a look, renovating the Carter House, the barns, that area, then coming in and working on adding shelters, splash pads, trails, and then this naturalized area over here at playground.
So kind of the final connectors and improving the rest of the amenities to kind of, again, level up to what we've been proposing.
And so then that brings us just about to $4 million on those.
So I guess if I could ask, so in a phase style world, is that the exact order you would see construction go if we opted to phase?
So what we were suggesting is in this initial phase, in phase one, take care of the golf course, get that, the updates that need to be done there. Get the amphitheater in there. That's a revenue generator. And can be, created relatively designed, engineered, and installed relatively quickly, as well as the fields. Again, as those can be designed, engineered, and bid out relatively quickly as compared to the building. So the thought was, let's get these two components, the amphitheater and these fields, will help provide revenue generation, but also, Judge, to your earlier point, it's not just about revenue, it's about lifestyle as well. And we get that, and I agree with you 100%. But it provides, the local folks an opportunity to get out there and play as well. So then phase two, once we get that going, this piece is going to take some time. But you got to get your architecture team together. You've got to design it, and there's a lot that's going to go into a facility that's this size, and making sure that you've crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's. So understanding that this is going to take a little bit longer, you could start them both at the same time, both phase one and phase two, with the intention that, hey, we're going to build them both, but you just have an early site package where you come out, you build this phase one. I call it phase one, but it'd be ready to build a lot faster than the actual building itself. And then phase three is once you've got all those things going, we can come in and wrap things up. These pieces could be added to the site package as well, or it could be added to the building package. It just depends on your priorities. And don't get me wrong, these are big numbers that we're talking about. This is what we heard from the community, from the survey information, and what it looks like on paper and how much it costs. So we understand that you as a committee have to decide how you want to move forward based on that information.
So just off the top of your head, through your experience, and I'm going to say, let's say the building is a $40 million building. What do you estimate that, and I think that's on the low end, but what do you estimate that this building, this facility, 160,000 square foot, is going to need per year in maintaining, staffing, everything else that would be part of that, of the building for its operational purposes? How much do you allot, do you say that you're going to, that we should consider staffing, all of that, utilities, everything as part of that?
Phil, are you ready to speak to that?
No, we're still working on developing the building as well as the staffing plan for that. We'll be going through the operations component with you all today because there is some things that you'll need to consider and provide some direction upon in order to move forward with finding the full expenditures for the site. But I can tell you, if I had our way, based upon the goals that were identified at the beginning, from regional draw, revenue generation, and providing service for the local needs, doing it all in one build out is going to have the biggest impact, create the greatest amount of synergy and excitement about the property, as well as the greatest return on the property, including the economic impact. If I were to break it down into sections and begin with one, the year-round capabilities of an indoor facility to generate revenue 12 months out of the year instead of 8 to 9 months out of the year creates a better return on investment as well. Your expenses will go up. And what we've seen from recreation centers that we have done in and around the country is that, recreation centers that are around $25 to $30 million to build are generating around $3 to $5 million in revenue and have about $3 to $4.5 million in expenses for those that are run under a business model. Under a social model, there would be more subsidy required for that. So that's just to give you an idea of some of the rec centers that we've worked on and what we're seeing across the country.
Have you all designed a building this large, 160,000 square feet?
We, as Pros Consulting, have been involved in several large facilities over 100,000 square feet. In fact, we were also part of a project in Santa Clara, California, doing the pro forma for a $250 million recreation center in conjunction with the International Swim Association, as well as the Swimming Hall of Fame Museum. And so there's various sizes all across the country. And nowadays, if individuals are looking to serve their current residents, as well as bring in visitors and prepare for growth that may be anticipated within the community, they're going larger as far as square footage. We look more to be about around 1.5 feet, 1.5 to 2 square feet per person as far as size when you're talking about your residents, just to serve those needs alone. So when you're talking about adding a regional draw and bringing in visitors, the facility would need to grow exponentially. We believe, as you'll see from some of the similar provider slides here in just a minute, that we have you right-sized for this within the region, as well as considering all of the other facilities and the local need too.
We can jump into the operations. After that, this is our last slide pertaining to the master plan. But we just wanted to again look at the close connections you guys have to the rest of the community, and some of the opportunities we're also proposing are as a connection to Elkhorn Creek. That could be a rails to trails opportunity there. The safe route to schools and really connecting to the Silver Lake community, as well as partnering with the high school to maybe look at some championship fields, whether, if they can get these turfed or, part of the program kind of operations combined with Lakeview Park, then that would increase your fields pretty easily. And then also just kind of looking at, again, beautifying Main Street to kind of incorporate as part of Lakeview Park. So again, these are just some other opportunities that we are proposing, but aren't necessarily part of this master plan. So unless there's more questions about master plan, Phil, we'll go ahead and let you jump into the operations. I know this is a ton of information.
Well, I'm gonna say this, I really would like to see the sand volleyball stay in. I'd like to see tennis courts, 6 courts on the right coming in, and I'd like to see more restrooms through the facility wherever we can, with possible gazebo type facilities, especially down in the low end for design. So that's what I'm saying I'd like to see in addition to what you've already drawn up.
All right.
Okay, so when we took a look at similar providers, we looked at the main components that the public had identified as desired moving forward from the survey. So when we looked at sports complexes, there are quite a few sports complexes within a 3-hour drive, and Lakeview does not have the space for enough fields to compete with some of the larger complexes. And that's referring to the existing fields. When adding those fields that Randy and Shannon have identified, it increases the potential and the return on the investment as well. So when we looked at the outdoor sports fields within the market, what we found is that within 1 hour drive time, you have 5 sports parks, makes up about 16% of the market. The average ball fields are 5, and the average multi-use fields are 1.8 amongst those 5 locations. So within the 1 hour drive time, the number of fields exceeds the immediate market. Within the 2 to 3 hour drive time, the market obviously has a lot more fields, and Elizabethtown was one that we had visited. That's within that 1 to 3 hour drive time, as well as BCRL, baseball and soccer, CNE Sports Complex, Blue Ash Sports Center on the north side of Cincinnati, also Warren County Sports Park and Grand Park exceed Lakeview Park in both types of fields, outdoor fields, both baseball and multi-purpose. The beauty of those is that those facilities are a little bit farther away, with the exception of the first couple mentioned that will take a little bit larger draw, and therefore they have larger number of fields for that larger draw. Ideally, more acreage, either adjacent or incorporated into Lakeview Park, could add additional fields and improve the county's position overall in the outdoor sports field market. Next slide, please. It's important to understand the difference in indoor spaces. As I just mentioned earlier, the convention recreation space is 85,000 square feet for conferences, as well as meetings, banquets, things of that nature, and recreation for the community. In many instances, the conferences will also have exhibit space. That's the exhibit hall. That is the 75,000 square feet that you see in the right side of the table, as we cannot count the meeting space for in the field house, as it cannot house any of the athletic activities that we were talking about because the ceilings are a little bit lower. Lakeview indoor courts exceed the market averages for standard court size, meaning 8 basketball courts is exceeding the number that we're finding in the locations within the similar provider. Lakeview full facility at 160,000 square feet is larger than the averages in all markets. The largest within the 1 to 2 hour drive time is 103,000 square feet, and the largest within the 2 to 3 hour drive time is 377,000 square feet, and that is Grand Park on the north side of Indianapolis. Next slide, please. When we took a look at the convention and event spaces, we found that Lakeview is below the average square foot in both markets within the 2 hour drive time or less. And that's a little bit deceiving. That's why we have that 720 thousand average square foot highlighted. And it's important to know that within that is the Kentucky Expo Center and the Kentucky International Convention Center. 2 of the largest square foot facilities happen to be in close proximity, but it does provide an opportunity for a smaller venue such as the one that we've recommended to obtain conventions and draw in visitors and have an economic impact. When we looked at the larger the larger drive time, we found that Duke Energy Convention Center, 750,000 square feet, is the only one that is larger than the 160,000 square foot of Lakeview, and that's within that 1 to 2 hour drive time. Next slide, please. When we looked at indoor tennis and pickleball courts, we found that Lakeview Park indoor tennis and pickleball courts exceed what the market has within the region. We felt that this was really an opportunity to capture your own niche when it comes to the paddle sports such as that. So we found that no indoor tennis courts were within the market, but there were indoor pickleball courts within the market. And the largest competitor for pickleball has 4 indoor courts and is more than 30 minutes away. Ultimately, there's enough room in the market for the county to move forward. However, it is the combination of the facilities and the amenities that were recommended by the public that create the synergy and the regional draw, as well as the revenue. If broken up, it will impact the draw, it will impact the revenue generation, and it will impact the economic impact, meaning that you will not realize the full capabilities until the site is fully developed. Drawing it out over the phases of construction will delay that impact, and you will get specific impacts based upon phase 1 amenities within the design. And when you get to phase 2, you will then add specific impacts from phase 2 from revenue, participation, visitors, and economic impact to the overall revenue and impact that has been generated just by phase 1 alone. Next slide, please. It's important to understand that destination parks require a lot of proactive management. What you see on the screen is a pretty detailed list of the types of management that will be needed specifically for this site. In many instances, when organizations such as a municipality, which may already have a Parks and Recreation department, begin to move forward in this type of a manner for this type of a park, it's important to look and see what the capacity is of the municipal structure to take on the additional management responsibilities that will be added from a destination park. And that's why we started with this slide. Next slide, please. So there are 3 roles in each operational model for a destination park. Those are owner, operator, and organizer. The owner assumes the assets and the responsibility for capital improvements, as well as maintenance and providing utilities to the facilities on site. The operator is responsible for daily operations, including facility schedules, utility costs, and ancillary services, and making sure that they are all staffed appropriately to create the best guest experience. The organizer is responsible for events, visitors, ancillary services that they may bring just as temporary services as part of the event that they are putting on. and non-event outreach and marketing as well. Next slide, please. It's important to also not just take a look at the operational models and the roles, but what are the risk and the effort associated with each one as well too. So these are the same roles: owner, operator, and organizer. We're just looking at the risk and the effort. Owners have typically low risk for the operations and for the events when they're not doing all three roles. It's best practice to include a hold harmless contract as part of that. And also knowing that you don't have the responsibility of operating as well as putting on the event, that also does decrease your overall expenditures as the facility provider as well. The owner has no obligations to the operations other than to schedule any needed repairs or maintenance to assets to ensure that it's not negatively impacting an event. The owner can serve as the facility provider, which is known as a passive operating model. This is common for municipalities when the skill sets are not adequate to achieve the outcomes, when the existing skill sets, I should say, are not there to achieve the outcomes. Operators, they have a low to moderate risk as well as a low to moderate cost for operations because they're not taking on the cost of operating the events under the circumstances. So when looking at the operators, they too will include a hold harmless as best practice for protection from organizers' negligence during events. Operators will work with organizers to host events and programs and build strong relationships with customers for retention. Organizers have a moderate to high risk, depending upon activity, and same for their cost associated with it as well. The higher the risk, the higher the cost to put on those events. Organizers have to be out in front of the operators to ensure facility time, providing all of the logistics for events, as well as collecting data from all of the visitors, and all in an effort to build the best guest experience possible, because that's what's going to build the customer retention, not just local customers, but those customers from outside of Frankfort and Franklin County as well. Next slide, please. So from all of our work up to this point, there's a few conclusions that we've come up with regarding the operations as well, the operational approach as well for this facility. And so there are many operational standards when managing a regional destination. We recommend the county consider the formation of a sports tourism commission to oversee the outcomes. Doing this can also open up additional funding sources with sports tourism taxes. Also, it's important that as a county, you play to your strengths. The county should outsource services that require an expertise that currently does not exist or cannot be obtained easily with existing staff. Also look to limit your cost and risk. That's another form that can be done by outsourcing. And then full build out of the program is the strength and the synergy of the vision that will achieve all of the outcomes identified. Ultimately, full build out is recommended and to contract with a facility management company. But if that is not possible, we see phase one with the capabilities of the county to own and operate, meaning the athletic fields are already an asset and an amenity that exists within the park. The county is already managing that and can easily manage that forward. There will be a slight increasing in staff that would be needed, but it doesn't mean that, hey, from the moment that phase one starts, we have to contract out. That's probably going to be a little bit smaller of a management firm that would take that, and probably not going to be as beneficial for that facility management company or for the county. When the facility comes into play, that's where there's a greater opportunity. Phase two can be outsourced to a facility management company, either just the convention recreation center space by itself, and the county still managing the sports fields around it, or the entire park as it sits can be part of that management for the sports and facility management company. Next slide, please. So it's important. We are talking about funding, revenue, and while some things may not necessarily be as important to generate revenue, we feel it's important for us to provide you with all the details, the data, and to have the county make the decision moving forward as to what truly is the best funding source moving forward. So it's going to require a dynamic funding source. Capital funding has been identified as part of this, but also dynamic funding source on the operational side as well. When we look at the capital funding opportunities, obviously the bed tax is something that is a possibility, especially with the formation of a sports tourism corporation. And it does create a dedicated funding source through that heads and beds tax. The goal is not to use just a single funding source here and there, but it's really to develop that dynamic funding strategy with a diversity of funding opportunities, both from the operational and capital side. Continuing on down, you'll see that we have naming rights highlighted, and capital campaigns are essential. Don't miss an opportunity for naming rights some of those larger amenities within the park, such as the amphitheater, the facility, the indoor facility itself, the sports fields. And our next slide will dive a little bit deeper into that in just a moment. So when we're looking at additional funding sources, public-private partnerships with enabling legislation from Kentucky allows governmental entities such as the county to work with the private sector to design, build, and then transfer said facility to the ownership of the county. A couple of the benefits to that is it decreases the overall cost of the project. No need to pay for the creation of the bond committee and selling of the bonds, but also it allows the private sector, which doesn't nearly have the same requirements as municipalities do when building and constructing assets. They're able to pull the project in quicker than the municipality would be able to. Also, we have redevelopment funds identified there as well too. Redevelopment funds for specific areas of the city or county or for specific facilities could be accessed. And it's just there noted that it's worth checking to see if any of those accounts or funds have been set up that have been collecting funds and are waiting for the right project to come along. Excuse me. When we move over to the operational funding for the facility, it's important to look at these opportunities in a holistic approach, again, dynamically trying to create as many of those as possible so that the level of subsidy is low or the facilities and amenities are cost neutral. Some of these which have been identified in the operational are currently being worked into the pro forma for the entire park where appropriate, such as user fees. User fees we know that we'll be utilizing for tournaments and things of that nature. And you'll see that here in just a moment. But user fees, parking fees, and sponsorship is an opportunity. Parking fees and admission fees are typically viewed as the same. It's if there's no real central location to collect that admissions fee, then a parking administrative fee can be done at the gate as vehicles are entering. So because the park tends to be wide open once you come in, it would be a little difficult to collect those admission fees for the outdoor athletic fields. It's going to be a little bit easier to collect those admission fees for the indoor fields. And what I mean by admission fees is it doesn't mean that the players are paying to get into the facility. That's already been covered by their team fee. It's for the spectators, and every venue charges spectator admission fees, whether it be for parking or whether it be in the form of parking or whether it be in the form of entrance at a specific facility. When we look at the private management group, again, there's an opportunity where the facility management company would contract for all or very specific operations of the park. The county would then get a percentage of the net income from their management. And there's a lot of resources that facility management companies bring to the table. When I spoke earlier about all the various management tasks that have to be accomplished in running a destination park, that capacity where making sure that you have enough staff to do the attraction, hiring and retention of staff, and all of the other components regarding HR, those companies come with a very large backing of resources to handle those a little bit easier than what the county could. When we look at property lease or leases at the bottom, that is where land and or a facility can be leased to either a developer if it hasn't been built yet, or if it has been built for a specific type of business. We are aware that the county owns 4 parcels still right off of, I want to say it might be Lakeview Drive or Park Drive, that goes where the Special Olympics office and headquarters are. And we know that the county has moved forward with selling some of those properties for other organizations to utilize, such as Special Olympics. But they could also develop those or lease developed space to businesses such as a hotel, urgent care, an ortho doctor, sports specific accessories, sports streaming video company, or bike and skate shops, just to name a few examples. Next slide, please. So as we looked at the design, we started to build out what were the greatest potential for sponsorship and or naming rights. You have those listed from largest to smallest here. Some of the opportunities that we have included are naming rights for the facility. That is the greatest potential. Doing an RFP for that and finding out who's out there that may be interested and initiating those negotiations would be a prudent activity. Sometimes you're able to ask a request for information, one that doesn't necessarily require that you actually take action on it and award it when it's complete, but one just to see what's out there. Most states have provisions that do allow for that. Terminology is extremely important, and we would encourage the county to explore that at the appropriate time. We've also included meeting rooms, the amphitheater, as I said, the sports fields, the inclusive and playground would also be a good opportunity for that. The sports arena, shelters, the dog parking concessions. In all, the opportunities for sponsorship have the potential to generate more than $4 million in revenue, and that's over a 5-year period. That's not annually. So it's important to understand that we have taken the mid-range as highlighted and utilized that to populate the total for a potential of 5-year income. But in addition, we have also taken that and decreased it by a percentage for capacity. So I think we have that, depending upon the amenity, varying between 25 and 75% of filling those sponsorships. And it's important to know you will not fill all of the sponsorships. So sometimes in presentations, individuals see these and they're very excited, but they're not informed that very few do actually fill all of them. The ones that come the closest and or do fill all of the sponsorship opportunities utilize a campaign, a capital campaign company, one that will help you set these up and actually gets a percentage of the revenue, but they're out there pounding the pavement to get those sponsorship dollars. And it's quite a bit of legwork. Departments and organizations that have tried that in-house always have felt at the end that they haven't fully accomplished or achieved the maximum amount that they could have if they would have gone the other route and utilized the firm to set these up professionally and market them. Next slide, please. So we wanted to talk about anticipated visitors up to this point. It's important to know that this number is built out the potential annual visitors from basketball, volleyball, performances that would take in the facility, as well as outdoor softball, outdoor soccer, and tennis, indoor tennis, and indoor pickleball. It's also important to maximize the operations of the park in full to increase the number of visitors and the overall economic impact potential. What this means is that weekday conferences in the facility, daytime, and sometimes an evening social will take up weekdays when most people are at work or in school and unable to utilize the facility. That's going to make sure that your facility is not staying warm or staying cool in the summer with all the lights on and all of the staff there and no revenue coming in. Also, weekdays would be utilized by local residents for park use, as well as certain spaces within the facility if there are no evening conferences or evening conference socials happening. And then finally, weekend is the greatest opportunity for indoor and outdoor sports tourism. Overall, we see the initial anticipated visitors from just those activities that I mentioned being 80,000, just a little over 80,000. Next slide, please. We had a couple of conversations with you regarding overnight accommodations, and it's extremely important to know that what you're about to build can be accommodated for those that need overnight stays. And these numbers do not include any of the conventions and visitors from that and or the local use currently, but most local use is not going to be needing overnight accommodations. So from the sports tourism and performances alone, it's anticipated that over 17,000 hotel nights will be needed for a 2-day tournament. In addition, the potential for day trip visitors is over 37,000. And those are folks from outside of the county that will not be spending the evening, but will be spending money, just less than what those folks would be spending per person overnight. When we look at the hotel room, the hotels and the room inventory, there is currently enough rooms to accommodate all activities within the park. With that said, the key for hotels is the location and the condition of the hotels and each hotel within the search. There are several of them that are rather small, and there are some of them that may not necessarily instill comfort to a visitor when they stay there. And so those are things that open up an opportunity. So it's for this reason, and the fact that the closest hotel is 1.4 miles away, that the county could see developers and hotels looking within that 1.4 mile radius to develop new hotel accommodations. And it may even be a hotel that already exists today, and they're looking to put in a second one because you're creating a reason for people to come to that destination park, and those folks would need a place to stay. You all also know with that 1.4 mile gap, we as an American society, we like to park really close to wherever it is we're going for some odd reason. And so that will generate the opportunity. And when people start looking at the gap in distances, they'll start to target potential locations for other hotels. Next slide, please. So we took a look at the initial revenue, and this revenue potential is currently at 1.34 million, and it does not include the conventions at this point in time, and those are really the largest revenue generator for the indoor facility that we have been speaking about. We also think it's important to note that this does not include concessions, golf, the driving range, or the amphitheater, and revenues from those as well are still being built out along with the expenditures and will be incorporated for our next presentation. Currently, we show a total of 62 events in combination and or individually for both the outdoor and the indoor sports, meaning smaller tournaments like tennis and softball could happen simultaneously as one is indoor and one is outdoor. Creatively making sure you're scheduling the space or that your facility management company is scheduling the space creatively is important to the overall outcomes. This still leaves room for conferences during the week and local events as performances have the ability to be held on weekdays. Seems to be Tuesdays and Thursday evenings tend to be popular for musical performances as well too. When we look at the peach colored cells, it's important for us to inform you that the number of fields for U8 is 3, for U6 is 1. But with the grassy area at the entrance to the right, as well as potentially on the synthetic turf fields, the number of fields for youth, because the team size, the number of player size is smaller, grows. And so you have the ability with soccer to create more fields than just the 3 U8 and the 1 U6 for tournaments, increasing your revenue generation in those two exponentially. It's also worth noting that those groups bring more people because of the number of fields you're able to fit in one traditional size field. Typically for adults, the youth, you can fit 3 to 6 on those properties or on those locations, those sites, depending upon what the age group is. So it's always a good idea to look to provide youth sports tournaments when wanting to fill the park as well as increase revenues. Next slide, please. In addition, it was important for us to build out the maintenance standards. And as many of you know, regional destination parks require the highest level of maintenance. If they're going to continue to provide that synergy, that excitement and electricity that happens from being able to gather and participate, it's important to know that they have to look the best that they can, meaning the attention to detail has to be the highest it can be. So an example would be edging sidewalks, deadheading flowers, avoiding the creation of ruts as you're driving utility equipment from one location to another. Those ruts typically happen on the edges of the roads and the parking lots, as well as on the edges of the sidewalks and trails as well too. And if those are created, it would require that those get fixed immediately. Those are just some examples of what level 1 or the highest level of maintenance is. In addition, we describe each task as is needed in the overall level of service or in all of the maintenance that's needed for the park. Each are by the lowest common denominator. And an example of that would be hard surfacing. So hard surfacing has multiple material types. So we're looking at brick pavers, we're looking at concrete, and we're looking at asphalt, to name a few. So we have them broken down by that lowest common denominator as well, because each one of those material types requires different maintenance. Each of the maintenance standards are both qualitative and quantitative standard, and that is so it's easier to measure success and to know whether what you're doing is achieving the outcomes. Standards exist for open grass space, natural turf areas, natural sports fields, synthetic turf, the structures, the landscaping, and the golf course with its many different types of maintenance. So there's just a couple of examples that we put on the slide as images so that you could understand what we were working on as well. But overall, we will utilize these standards to continue building out the expenditures for each of the amenities and what it will take to maintain those based upon unit costs. And we're in the process of building out the unit costs as well. And to your point, Judge, what's made building out the unit costs a little bit more challenging this year than in past is that level of inflation you had mentioned earlier. And so we will be incorporating inflation into that at its current rate, 5.4%, but we'll also be recommending that the county, as construction begins for these amenities, that you revisit this, because right now we are hearing projections of inflation, overall inflation, into the double digits beyond what we've seen in a long time. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to happen. It's just always good to be prepared and to check those numbers again as you get closer to actually constructing the site. Next slide, please. Shannon, did you want to take next steps? You're on mute. Shannon and Randy, you are on mute.
We've thrown an awful lot of information at you. There's not a good way to do this. There's just a lot of moving parts. But we wanted to make sure that you understood the decisions that we've made weren't just made out of thin air, that we really are trying to respond to what we've heard from you, the committee, and also the public. So next steps would be for you all to convene, talk about what you've heard today. Again, it is a lot of information to digest, and we will send a copy of this presentation so you've got it. Get back to us with your comments. If you'd like to schedule another meeting, that would be fine. If you'd just like to send us, a memo, that would be fine too. We will take that information and finalize the master plan, tighten all the numbers up once we get it dialed in. And I think, Judge, we heard you earlier. There's some things that you feel strongly need to be incorporated into the park. Those things can be handled, and we'll also be able to apply the, what's this going to do from the numbers standpoint as far as bringing people in or providing, other opportunities for folks. So we'll do that. As far as the tourism direct spending study, Phil will be able to jump into that once we have your final comments. And that will be new information in the final, well, it'll be finalized information in the master plan. And then we'll provide the implementation strategy. And if you have thoughts regarding that, we'd love to hear those. And then I think if all goes well, if we hear back from you within the next week or so, the plan was to get things finalized and be ready to come down there and present publicly in early December. So that's kind of the plan. And then, obviously the ultimate deliverable will be the master plan, which is, will be a booklet with all of this information and data in it, and a step-by-step plan to get you from point A to point B.
Okay. I'll start with the ex officios, Charlie Lewis.
Thanks, Judge. I appreciate the Hitchcock group being here today and providing all this information. There's a lot of really good info. It is a lot of working parts. And I look forward to getting a copy and kind of reviewing and going back through. And I will send an email. Of course, we're going to schedule a park meeting and discuss some stuff. But I'll send an email too with a few questions and concerns, or just some ideas thrown out there that we've discussed or maybe have not discussed that pertain to the fair and some of their requests. A lot of that stuff was covered, and there's definitely some things in there that do help the fair. But I was at a meeting recently, and they had a few ideas that they wanted to make sure we included. So I'll just do that in a group email to everyone and just kind of throw it out there for conversation. But a lot of stuff was covered, so that's the good thing. So again, I appreciate everybody's time. Lots of great info. I look forward to getting a copy.
All right. Ann Northcutt.
Yes, I want to thank the Hitchcock Group for all this information that you've brought and all your explanations. As Charlie says, I think that once we've had time to review everything, that as a park committee, we'll probably have some discussions and exchange some information. Just from my point of view, I saw things in phase 3 that I would really, like to see concurrently with phase 1. So I'm sure everybody has different ideas about how everything should move along, but I look forward to working with the committee and seeing where we go with this. Thank you.
All right. Squire Tracy. Squire Tracy, are you frozen? Looks like he's frozen.
He's
Squire
not
Muller.
sleeping.
If not, he's doing a pretty good job sitting still.
Mhm.
Thank you, Judge. Yeah, I also want to thank the 1,200 people that filled out that survey. I feel like that was great community engagement. I think we had 30 some, people who came out and represented all the sports and activities in our community. Park committee, Judge, yourself, Squire Tracy have been great, plus everybody else that's on this call. Just exciting time in Frankfort. I mean, at the end of the day, I think we need to look back, and I know he just passed, but Bob Arnold had a vision for Franklin County, and he created Lakeview Park. And I think we're kind of at a pivotal point right now that we could be the next ones to do something really cool for our community and much needed. So I just want to, again, thank Hitchcock Group, pros, just everybody involved. Thank you.
Okay. Charlie, I want you to set up a park committee meeting next week sometime, whenever we can, or week after, as soon as we can. Then we'll discuss all this, and then we'll get back and we'll have that park meeting will be open to the public, because I know the public, there's a lot of people that watch this. And then we'll hopefully have any questions, get all those answered, and then we'll get that date set. I think we need to set, Tambra, I'll ask that you set a date at the library for 5 o'clock meeting sometime once we have our next park meeting and decide. So we'll have the library set up for that type of that meeting. I see that Squire Tracy is back on. Squire Tracy, I'll turn it back to you.
Sorry, Judge, my computer or my thing just drug. So I'd like to also thank Randy, Phil, Shannon, fiscal court staff, and committee members. Thank you all so much for all your hard work on this project. I see this as a transformational project, an opportunity to invest in our community, the families that live here, work here, play here, raise their families here. It's exciting, very exciting. Thank you, Judge.
Okay, Squire Muller, you had your hand up again.
Yeah, Judge. I just didn't know, like, let's say next week that Charlie could pull a park meeting together. Can we meet in person, like, and have a blueprint and sit around the table and
Sure.
kind of, yeah, I think for me, I mean, that would be, Ann made some great comments there as far as phasing and things. And I just think it would be easier at that point if we could just, if we wear masks, that's fine. But to get around the table, I think that would expedite things and make it a little bit easier. Thank you.
Sure. That would be perfect. Okay. Hitchcock Group, thank you. I think the goal here is to make sure that we are able to do some things that will benefit our community, will help our park be a better facility, and most of all, things that we can afford to do. We're not paying you this money to take this master plan and put it on the shelf and let it collect dust. So I think we're all committed to making sure that something happens, and all of that is going to be contingent upon what we can afford to do. If it takes phases and whatever, that's what we'll have to do. So to the community, thank you for watching. To the Hitchcock Group, thank you for your presentation. And for all the committee members and staff, thank you for being here. And we'll be having a meeting soon, and Pam will let you know when that is. So with that being said, thanks everybody. Thanks for watching. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Judge.
Thanks, Judge.
Thank you.